Alright guys, so you should have your note sheet. It should be dated. Alright, so we're going to be graphing lines straight from the equation. So previously we were given an equation, we had to create the table, do all the work, come up with our y values, and then graph those ordered pairs. Well, on this note sheet, we're going to go directly from the equation to the graphed line. So we're going to graph these in the form of y equals mx plus b, which is called the slope-intercept form. Okay. So I'm going to write over here to the side, y equals mx plus b. Remember, m is also another name for our slope. Okay? So m, the number that's being multiplied times x, is always going to be our slope. Okay, that's the slope part of the name. The b value is going to be our y-intercept. It is where the equation, the graphed line, is going to intercept the y-axis on the graph. So it's where we come up with the name of slope-intercept. It's from the slope and the y-intercept within the equation. So to graph a line in slope-intercept form, there are two steps. They're pretty simple, but there's quite a few different situations that could be happening. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to plot the b value, which is the y-intercept. And that is always graphed on the y-axis. That is always, always, always the first point that you put on the graph, and it is always graphed on the y-axis. Okay. Then after that, we're going to graph our slope by counting rise over run. Remember, that's our y value over our x value. And then I'm also going to put the reminder of that rise is up and down and run is left and right. Okay, so on this first graph, let's go through an equation. So if I give you the equation y equals 3 over 4x plus 2. The first thing I'm going to ask you to do on all of these is to figure out what the slope is and write it down, and figure out what the y-intercept is from the equation. Remember, the slope is always the one that is being multiplied times the x. So in this case, our slope is 3 over 4. Our b value, what is being added or subtracted to that, is going to be our y-intercept. So our y-intercept is positive 2 and our slope is 3 over 4. So the first thing that I'm going to do is plot the y-intercept. So on the y-axis, I'm going to go where y is positive 2. So that's right here on the graph. Then I'm going to use my slope, and I'm going to write it over here, 3 over 4. 3 has to be either an up or down movement, and 4 has to be a left or right movement. Now it's positive, so we have to create a positive line. So from your y-intercept, you need to count up 3. 1, 2, 3. And then I also need the 4 to be positive, so I need to go 4 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, and plot my next dot. Now guys, the other way to get a positive slope is the double negative. So remember, a double negative also creates a positive. So instead of going up 3 and right 4, I'm going to do the opposite of that. So I'm going to go down 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to go to the left 4 because both of those are negative movements. Then you're going to use your ruler and you're going to connect those, putting arrows on either end. And the last thing you should be doing is checking that your line is correct. So if it's a positive slope, 3/4 was a positive number, you should end up with a positive line. Okay. All right, let's try a few more. All right, so y equals -1/2 x minus 3. So off to the side, you're going to write down what your slope is, and you're going to write down what your y-intercept is. So my y-intercept this time is going to be a -3, and my slope is a -1/2. So when I write down that my slope should be a -1/2, my line should end up being a negative line. So it should be going downhill when I'm done with it. So the first one you're going to plot is your y-intercept on your y-axis. So I'm going to go where y is -3 and put my first point. So when you have a negative slope, you can only have one negative movement. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. So if I am right here at my y-intercept, I can go up 1, but going up 1 is a positive movement. So that means when I move over 2, it needs to be going negatively. So -2 would be to the left 2 places. If you can, you need to get as many dots on there as possible. So I'm going to do that again. From this point right here, I'm going to go up 1 and left 2. And I'm going to keep continuing that pattern until I run out of graph space. But then I'm going to also show you the reverse. So if you go back to the y-intercept, I went up 1 and left 2. But if I would have went down 1, going down is a negative movement. So then I would have needed to move to the right 2 spots. And then keep going in that pattern. You want to get as many points as possible on this graph line. And notice that's going downhill, so I know that I have a negative line. All right, number 3, y equals 4x plus 1. Guys, I'm going to start talking kind of fast and moving kind of fast. If you need to pause it at any point, go ahead and pause it to get caught up. So slope and y-intercept. So my y-intercept on this one is a +1. And then my slope is a whole number. But guys, remember, we can put any whole number over 1 to make it into a fraction. And you have to remember to do that when you have a whole number. So I'm going to go up to +1 on the y-axis for my y-intercept. And then my slope is positive, so I'm going to try and move up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and right 1. But then I need to reverse that, so I'm going to go back to my y-intercept, and I'm going to go down 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I also need to go left 1 to make that double negative. Connect them, arrows on both ends, and then make sure that it's a positive line. Again, you can pause this at any time. Y equals negative 2x minus 5. All right, so again, my slope is a negative 2 over 1. Since it's a whole number, I have to put it over 1. My y-intercept is negative 5, so I'm going to go down to negative 5 on the y-axis. And then my slope is negative 2 over 1. I can't go down, so I have to move up 2. And since going up 2 is positive, my 1 has to be a negative. So I have to go to the left 1. And I'm going to repeat that as many times as possible, getting as many points on my graph. And then the last thing you should do is check it. So it was a negative slope. You should end up with a negative line. So here's our fifth one. So we should write out our slope. Our slope is 3 over 2. And our y-intercept, guys, when there's not a y-intercept, then that's exactly what it is. Our y-intercept is 0. So we're going to graph that first point at where y is 0, which is right here smack dab in the middle. And then you're going to go positive 3, 1, 2, 3, positive 2. I can do that again. Or I can go go back to the y-intercept and go down 3 and left 2 to create that double negative movement. Guys, on these next couple, I want you to pause it. I want you to pause it before you work through it and see if you can get it right, and then play it. All right, so my slope and my y-intercept. My y-intercept is 4. My slope on this one, there's not a number there. Guys, in math, when there's not a number there in front of x, we should always put a 1. Well, 1 still isn't a fraction, but any whole number I can put over 1. So my slope is going to be positive 1 over positive 1. So on the y-intercept, I'm going to go to positive 4. And then I need to go up 1 and right 1 so that it's positive. Up 1, right 1. And then I'm going to go back to the y-intercept and I'm going to reverse it. Down 1, left 1. Down 1, left 1. All the way to the end of my graph. So there should be lots of dots there. Since it was a positive 1x, I should have a positive line. So I'm going to put 7 over here and I'm going to put 8 over here. I need you guys to work on both of those. So my slope on number 7 is negative 2 over 3. My y-intercept is positive 6. And I'm going to end up running out of time, so I'm just going to go ahead and put these on here so that you can see if you're right. You should be raising your hand when you're done to get them checked.